I get that, but like, why?
Because I can't draw a stupid portrait. I don't even know where to start. I just wish there was someone out there that could help teach me or something. It's not like that's ever gonna happen. I mean, who am I gonna find? It's whatever though, I mean, it's not like you really understand anyway. Hey, where'd you go? I was gonna ask him to draw me. Hey guys, welcome to the Nase place. If you're new here, I'm an artist. I do all kinds of drawings and tutorials, and today I'm actually going to be showing you how I do self-portraits and kind of walk you through my process. Now keep in mind that there are a lot of different ways you can do a portrait. There isn't just one way, so I'm just going to show you my way and how I like to do things. So let's just jump in and get started. Normally when I'm doing portraits, they're usually commission pieces, so I usually just get a reference photo that someone already took. But if it's for me or someone in my household, I have a little more control of the reference, and I like to make some creative liberties here. So in this case, I'm using my little brother, and my first step when getting a reference would be to make sure you have really good lighting. I'm not saying you need to go on Amazon and buy some crazy expensive lights or anything. You can see here I'm literally just using the natural light from the door to my left here. But a key thing to think about is making sure you have two light sources that contrast each other. For me, I have a really bright light on one side and a darker light on the other side. This is really going to help make your shadows pop and keep your portrait looking three-dimensional instead of really flat and boring. And you don't just have to use this light and dark scenario. There's all kinds of really cool and interesting things you can do with light, just to show you a few examples here. So all I'm really trying to say here is, if your subject's face looks like one solid color and you can barely see any shadows, you might want to play with your lighting. So once I finished playing around with my lighting and taking a few pictures of my brother, I tried editing the photo itself to really get the highest quality photo I can. I find it really helps me to see the really fine details. You can also see here I'm just cropping out a lot of the photo. Don't think that once you've taken the picture you're stuck with it. You can always zoom in and get the exact position you want. For me, I saw that my brother lined up pretty well with the rule of thirds, which is a good composition rule to follow. I highly recommend learning composition rules if you don't know them. It'll make your drawing stand out so much more. I'll try to make a video for you soon on it. So once I was satisfied with how the reference was looking, I went on to the sketching phase. Now there's a lot of ways you can sketch this out. I do different things all the time depending on how much time I have. Some people just straight up go for it and freehand it. Some people use transfer paper and trace it on. Normally for commissions I use something called the grid method, where you literally just draw a grid on your paper, and using those boxes as a guide, you map out where you're supposed to draw it. So for most of this is what I did. The only part I used transfer paper on was the shirt, because I really didn't feel like figuring out where all those folds go. I know. I'm lazy. So after I sketched out my reference and erased all my grid lines, it was time for the shading. So the very first thing I do is pull out all the different shades I'm going to be needing. It really depends on the person you're doing, but the biggest thing to keep in mind is that you want at least 3 or 4 different colors for the skin. For me, I literally choose about 6 or 7. Don't just use a peach color. Your skin has a ton of color on it, like reds, pinks, browns, blacks, tans. Sometimes you can even see little specks of light green and purple if you look hard enough. So don't just get one color. The next thing I do for this is I take a look at my reference photo and look for all the darkest shadows, and then I color those in. A really good tip I learned is when you're doing areas that are mostly made of cartilage, like your ears and your nose, the shadows are typically more brownish red, whereas shadows around your eyes and under your hair or in the crevice of your mouth are typically either darker brown to a black. So after I found all the shadows in the face, I start on the midtones. This particular portrait actually ended up having more midtones than the shadows. Pretty much the whole right side of his face is midtones. So for the midtones, I like to use a very light shade of brown and use it as a base color. Then I go in with the most dominant color I see, which for this is actually pink, and I apply that color to the base color I just put down. Keep in mind that you are still shading. Everything has form to it. You don't just want to apply one flat color to it. Try to vary your pressure and darken the areas that may be in a little bit of shadow more than others. At this point I go back with a darker shade of brown and add any midtones or shadows I might have missed. Again, keep in mind that your ears and your nose are most likely going to have more red than anywhere else. So as I move on to the lips, the biggest tip I can give you here is to really look for the highlights. They may be really subtle, but it can make a huge difference in the end if you add them. Also pay attention again to the form of the lips and how they curve more on the bottom, whereas the top lip has harder edges. This also depends on the person too though. I'm mainly referring to the one I'm drawing now. Going on to the highlights, this should be your brightest skin tone. For me, it was very close to white actually, with just a little bit of peach color thrown in there. If you ever feel like you missed some highlights in your midtones, you can easily take an eraser to lighten some things up. Now that I've completed the face, I am blending it all together with a colorless blender and a white colored pencil. This is really going to help you get a nice and smooth finish to your skin. As I finish up the neck here, I want to quickly share with you how I do hair. Now I'm going to be honest with you here, out of everything, hair is definitely one of those things that I struggle with a lot. It can definitely be a struggle, especially with a girl's hair. But the first thing you want to do is put a light base layer down. Here I'm using brown because in the picture his hair looks brown. After I've applied this base layer, I grab my black and fill in all the spaces where I see black in the photo. See, when I do hair, I really have to break down every little shadow into a shape. I'll try to show you what I mean by going over it here in Procreate. You can see this very black shadow here, and if I were to trace this, of course I'm going to go fast so it's not going to be perfect, but if I outline this and maybe change the color to like a bright orange so you really see what I'm talking about, you'll see I can just break up the hair into a bunch of different shapes. So that's kind of what I was thinking about as I filled in the black areas. Then of course once I did that, the rest was pretty easy because it was just the lighter brown for the highlights. So now I'm just going back to the eyes because I forgot to add shadow. And you really want to add shadow because it makes your eyes look so much more realistic if you do that. If you just leave them white, it doesn't look great. Alright, and now I'm just moving on to the last step here, which is the shirt. All you really have to do is think of the same thing as you did for the hair. Find all the different shapes, the shadows, and the midtones, and the highlights. That's really all I'm doing for the shirt. Out of everything, even though it was the easiest for me, the shirt took way longer than I thought it would. You really have to add lots of layers with the pencil to get a finished look. Now I'm just adding the sleeve and the arm here. I put a dark base layer of red down for that shadow on his arm, because although it may look black, it is actually just a very dark red. And as I finish blending the rest of his arm, I pretty much have completed the portrait. If this was a commission, what I normally do is trim it to the right size, stick it in a frame, wrap it up, and ship it off. This was just something nice I did for my brother, and his face he made after seeing it finished for the first time is what makes it all worth it. If you guys don't already know, I'm currently doing commissions for people. So if you or someone you know has been dying to have a hand-drawn portrait done, feel free to email me using this email. I'm also on Instagram as well as Facebook, so feel free to message me anytime. I'll put my email and pricing information in the description below. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I've really been trying to work on my editing skills a little bit and get the highest quality footage as I can with an iPad and Android phone. Eventually I am going to be purchasing a nice camera along with some mics because I really just want to make the best content I can for you guys. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with your friends. And I will see you on the next video. I can't wait to get more stuff out there for you guys.